Do you know money is actually being stolen from you every second of every day? Yeah, it is. It's a hidden tax. You probably don't even know that this tax exists, but you certainly are living it right now. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about inflation. Yeah, that thing that increases the price of everything. Who gets hit the most with inflation? It's low-income households. They make money and they spend most of what they make, if not all of what they make. So therefore, if the cost of milk, the cost of fuel, the cost of housing all goes up and their income doesn't go up, well, I think you can see the problem. But in today's video, we're not gonna talk so much about the problem called inflation, the hidden tax called inflation, the theft of your wealth called inflation. I'm gonna show you today how to beat it. Not just beat it, how to actually play into it, how to get wealthy from rising inflation. And some of you are probably thinking, yeah, but
Chris, inflation's going down.
no, it's not, it's going up, and I'll prove that today as well. So when Jerome Powell says we're going to see rates higher for longer, that in your mind should mean inflation isn't going down fast enough. So today, I'm gonna show you how to get wealthy from inflation. My name's Chris Naugle. This is What Now? What's next for inflation? So I mean, how have you been dealing with it? Like seriously, like how have you dealt with all this crap that's going on, this hidden tax? Because it's hit hard. I mean, over the last couple of years, goods and services have in some cases more than doubled. When I go to the grocery store with my wife and we're just looking to get basic things, I am shocked at the price of things, and I'm sure you are too. I mean, yeah, gas is going up and car prices are going up and rent. Let's talk about rent and housing. Yeah, that went up significantly. All of these things hurt most people. But there's a silver lining to this whole thing. I mean, how can we use what hurts some people to actually benefit and help people? Well, there is a really easy way to do it. Now, unfortunately, what I'm gonna teach today probably won't help those in the low income brackets. Now, I'm not trying to kind of not help them, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck, there's really not much you're gonna be able to do. All I ever say to that is keep pushing, keep going toward your goals. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. Just work harder. Listen, let me digress a little bit and come over and talk about this. This is really important. Folks, there has never been a time in history that it's easier to get ahead. Just look around. I was flying yesterday and we were at this restaurant. Every waitress just went by us, didn't even say hello, didn't try to take our order, didn't ask if we needed anything. They just kept going right by us. But there was this one waitress, not even our waitress, who kept stopping saying, has anybody helped you? She was smiling, she was laughing. She said, let me get somebody right over here. And she said, have they been here yet? Oh, come on. And then she went and got it. She literally was talking to us the entire time. Why do I bring that up? You see, she knew something. She knew that basic communication, just solving somebody else's problem. And that problem can be as simple as like, hey, I wish I could get my order in, or I wish I could get a seat at a restaurant. So simple as saying hello. Do you think her tips are higher than the rest of the waitresses and waiters? Absolutely. Do you think I wanted to tip her even though she wasn't my waitress? Absolutely. She was funny, she was articulate, she paid attention. All she did is just a little bit more than everybody else. And that's all people need to do today is a little bit more, and they will make significantly more money. But if you're not willing to do just a bit more, if you're not willing to rise above and be the person that does the extra work, well, inflation, well, look around. It's probably hurting you. Let's come back into inflation. So have you ever really looked at the definition of inflation? Well, check this out right here from Oxford. Here is the definition. It is a continuing rise in the general price levels, usually attributed to an increase in the volume of money and credit relative to available goods and services. Now, some of you probably are like, what the hell does that mean? Well, let me explain. As you already know, when you hear inflation, you relate it in your mind to all things going up in price. But really, why does that happen? Well, the Federal Reserve, which just so you all know, is not federal at all. It is not government at all. It is not owned by the government, controlled by the government. It is a private institution, and if you ask me, Satan sits on the board, but hey, that's just my opinion. But the Fed is in charge of monetary policy. In other words, the Fed controls interest rates. The Fed controls the printing of money and how much. So when the pandemic happened, we all know what happened. Everything shut down. The Fed immediately reacted and said, oh my goodness, we have to react, we have to stimulate things, we have to make sure businesses don't go out of business. And what'd they do? They went over to the Treasury and they turned that sucker on high. And it was like money just printing like crazy. Matter of fact, it wasn't really printing. It's just numbers on a screen today. They just add more money to the system. And then that money gets distributed in various different ways through the central banking system, but also through the government. You see, the Fed, because it is not federal, the Fed lends money to the United States government. And the United States government gives the Fed an IOU. And the IOU, you know what it is. The Fed basically has treasury bonds, treasury bills, and all sorts of things like that. They are just IOUs. The United States government says, we owe you this money. And then the United States government, what they do is they distribute that money however they see fit, usually in absolutely inefficient ways. But during the pandemic, you all got a check. If you own a business, you probably took advantage of the PPP loans, and those were probably forgiven. You probably took advantage of the other loans and all sorts of different systems which put more money into your business, allowing you to spend more money, stay open, keep people employed, and here we are today. But in doing that, the Fed maybe just turned it on high for a little too long or a little too fast, because all of that money, $5.2 trillion, entered the system, entered the economy, which made it so that when everything opened, people had extra money. Imagine that. So let me show you a chart. You see, during the pandemic, something crazy happened. People's savings went up substantially. And that makes sense, right? Everybody was stuck at home, they were working from home, but they couldn't spend as much money because we weren't flying, we weren't traveling, we weren't going out to eat, we weren't going out to stores, we were just existing. And because we were just existing, but we still had paychecks and we still had free money given to us by the government, we saved money. Look at the chart. It was awesome. I remember watching this going, yes, people are going to get to that 10% minimum level, the law of wealth, the first law of wealth, save 10% of what you earn. And that did happen. And while they were saving, you know, another amazing thing happened. Look at this. Debt was being paid down at unbelievable levels. Literally, debts were just going down and being halved. I don't care if it was credit card or car loans or mortgages, or all debts were getting paid off. And then another amazing thing happened. The news came on one day and it said the world opened back up.
The pandemic is officially over.
And depending on where you lived in this country, you were out spending money sooner in some states and later in others, like here in New York. You see, in New York, we had the luxury of sitting home a lot longer, which means we were able to save money a little longer, pay down debt a little bit longer. But when that news came on and said, you can start traveling, you can start going to dinner, it was crazy because everybody went out there. It was summer, if you all remember that, and it was like revenge summer. Everybody went out. They had this newfound wealth, which was formed by saving money and paying down debt, so they weren't burdened by debt. Prices were still low. Money was incredibly cheap to use because the Fed had dropped interest rates when all this happened to stimulate the economy. Remember, the Fed controls monetary policy, which is interest rates. The Fed dropped rates close to zero, making it so that we could take loans really inexpensively. There was tons of money in the system because the Fed also had the Treasury print about $5.2 trillion. So there was no shortage of money out there. There was free checks coming left, right, and center.
It's a letter from our friends.
Just think about that. What happened? There was massive demand, and that demand led to lack of supply. More demand, less supply does what? Takes the price of goods and services through the roof. Inflation skyrocketed to almost 9+%. Now, let's just put that into perspective. I want to show you this chart, which is the history of inflation. Check this out. Let's go back and look at the 1920s, the roaring 20s. It's kind of like now, the roaring 2020s. But back then it was the roaring 20s. Look at that. Inflation was skyrocketing. It was skyrocketing because of exactly what I just said. People had money. They were employed. Payrolls were going up. They were spending money. Financing was there. And what do you see? You see inflation over 20%. But what did that lead to? The Great Depression. And what happened when the Great Depression happened? Look at that. Inflation went negative, literally. Why? Because, well, the Fed dropped rates. Now, let's fast forward a little bit because I don't want to bore you with any other periods of time, but there was a period of time in the 1970s where the similar situation happened. In the 1970s, when President Nixon took us off the Bretton Woods system, that drove inflation up. And look what happened. It took inflation to 13%. And some of you may not know what the Bretton Woods system was, but basically, he took us off the gold standard. You do remember that. So gold no longer backed money. So what did that give them the ability to do? Print more of it, because you don't need to have Fort Knox gold backing the dollar. Now, you all know the problem with that, right? We have now a fiat currency, but it's okay because everybody else's currency is fiat today. Fast forward right over to where we're at now. We were incredibly low inflation numbers, incredibly low interest rate numbers, and then they got even lower when the pandemic hit. But now everybody's got money. Everybody's employed because when the world opened back up, people had jobs. They started going back to work when their unemployment ended and when they were told they had to go back to work. And lo and behold, you had a real supply issue. Because when you think about inflation, I want you to look at this chart right here. So check this chart out by RBA.gov. What this does is it says the causes of inflation. There's demand pull, there's cost push, and there's inflation expectations. But let me hit these really quickly. Demand. You all know what that is, and I just explained it. When there's more demand than there is supply, that essentially is demand pull inflation. So just think about this. $5.2 trillion was printed, and that money makes it into the economy. So how strong does that make an economy? I'll just let you figure that out. So that's demand pull. But then we look at cost push inflation, which is a little different, but basically all tied into demand. Cost push inflation is caused by the effect of higher input costs on the supply side. But think about that, right? The supply side has to get more expensive. If there's a ton of demand, there's more demand for the supply, so therefore the supply goes up. So you have this ripple effect. Demand creates supply problems, and we saw that. Remember, they couldn't get goods and services in here fast enough. The ports were all backed up because we couldn't move goods off fast enough. I mean, listen, don't even get me started about the fact that people just didn't want to go to work, but we had a major supply problem. And what did that do? It made it so used cars and all other things started going crazy. You remember, you used to be able to do work on your house for one price, and then all of a sudden it was double. And I'm not even kidding you. Cars, for the first time ever, when you'd buy a used car or you had a lease, you got more money for that car when you turned around and sold it just a few weeks, months, or maybe years later. It was insanity. But that right there is cost push. And then the third one, and I'm trying not to bore you, is inflation expectations, just like it sounds. It's expectations of where inflation is going to go in the future. The reason I bring that up is right now, that's what we're dealing with. The expectation of what's going to happen with inflation. So let's just talk about what we have seen over the last couple months. You've seen Jerome Powell come on many times. And in the beginning of the year, I can't believe he said it, but he did. He opened the door saying the Fed was anticipating dropping rates 3 times in 2024. The market went silly. Every stock boomed and everybody was rallying, saying, yes, interest rates are gonna come down, money's gonna get cheap again, we can refinance our houses, we can buy cars cheaper. Everything was all over the place in the news. It was just a great, great piece of news. And then all of a sudden, data started coming out. And oh man, did he maybe mess up a little bit? Yeah. News started coming out that inflation was going the wrong way, and that brings me to right here, right now. Where is inflation? 3.48, check it out. But that doesn't mean anything. But where was inflation last month? Just to put things into perspective, today is the end of April. So where were rates last month? Well, 3.15. We're at 3.48, rates were 3.15, but last year they were at 4.98. So we are moving the right direction, but slower. So Jerome Powell comes on and says, we're probably not gonna drop rates. And the market was like, oh, no. And everybody else was like, no. But That's the fact. They might not drop rates in 2024 because if inflation keeps going the wrong direction, well, they got no choice but to keep interest rates higher for longer. And that ain't good for most of America. That's definitely not good for Wall Street. But Wall Street eventually, after it digested that, just shrugged it off and said, who cares? We're gonna continue to rally because we've got AI and we've got the Magnificent Seven and we've got technology, and those companies are all overinflated, bubbles, manipulated, speculated. Anyway, so do I got you excited? Do I got you fired up? Well, I want you to get even more fired up because I need you to get in the fighting mood. And here's what I need you to do. I need you to fight to kick some ass. Actually, I just need you to click the subscribe button. Yeah, just hit that little button right there, that red one that says subscribe. And while you're at it, what I'd like you to do is hit that little bell up top. Whoa! That bell. Smash the bell. What I need you to do is I need you to think of that bell just like inflation. You can do a little jab, jab, and then the right hook, but you missed. Jerome Powell's been missing all year, so it's okay if you miss. If you miss, because Jerome's not getting it right, the Fed's not getting it right, and you probably aren't either. So let's dive back into how are we gonna kick inflation's ass. So we know we got a little inflation problem, which awesome. I made it all sound bad before, but now I'm gonna make it sound good. Because inflation being higher for longer means interest rates stay higher. Woo! Why am I excited? Because when interest rates are higher, what can we do? We can make more money on our dollars. That's right. So how do we kick inflation's ass? We make this, the tool called money, work for us at a higher velocity. And how can we do that? Well, let's just start with basic fundamentals. Your money has to go somewhere. It has to start somewhere. Most of you are using a bank, so stop using the banks that pay you low interest rates or no interest rates. Find high interest rates at banks. They exist. Oh, they exist. I ask every single week and I am still hearing 4 to 5%. So find the bank that pays you 4 to 5%. Now, some of you are like, yeah, but my bank doesn't have that. They keep trying to sell me a CD. Great, get yourself a 3-month CD, get a 6-month CD. You will never hear me say this again. But if you can get a 3 or 6 month, just go with the short term, 3 or 6 month CDs, you probably can make 4 to 5.5%. Get yourself some CDs. Now, how else can you play this game? Well, you could get one of those specially designed and engineered whole life insurance policies. You could change where your money goes first and you can put it over there in the whole life, again, specially designed. And now, how can you benefit? Well, your money will earn interest and dividends, and it will continue to earn interest and dividends even if I take that money out of the whole life and make it go to work over here at an even higher interest rate. So let's just say your policy is paying you 5.5%. Okay, that's the gross return before the cost of insurance. Let's say we then take a loan from our policy, which when we do that from a non-direct recognition company, the ones we use, now your money doesn't stop earning interest and dividends. It's still earning 5.5%. But now I lend it to one of you at 15% through privatemoneyclub.com. Check it out. So I lend it at 15%. So how much money am I now making? So I'm making 15% over here with security being the house in first lien position. Now that 15% I have, where's that money go? Am I gonna put it back in the bank? Oh, no. I'm gonna take that 15% and I'm gonna put it back over here into my bank, that specially designed whole life, which pays the loan down to the insurance company, which yes, they do charge interest, but now I'm reducing that interest because that's how APRs work with simple interest. As I make payments to pay that down, and whose money am I using to make the payments? Somebody else's. And how much control did I lose? 0. So if I take that interest payment that I got from Private Money Club, put it back in the policy, do I have access to that money immediately when the check clears? Yes, I do. And what did it do? It allowed me to pay less money to the insurance company. And also, while I'm paying less to the insurance company, I'm making more from the insurance company because of compounding interest. Do you see why we use the infinite banking concept for everything we do? But I haven't hit how inflation helps that. Because some of you are thinking, Chris, inflation doesn't help those whole life policies. Yeah, but high interest rates do. Because if you have a mutually owned life insurance company and you have a policy, guess what they do? they pay you a dividend every year, which, yes, it's a return of unused premiums, but it's also due to profitability. And how do insurance companies invest their money, your money? Well, they go out there and they buy treasury bonds. And what happens in high interest rate environments like today? Treasury bonds pay high interest. Just ask the banks. Just ask anybody. Just ask all the countries that buy our treasury bonds. Why they're buying so many of them today is because they pay high interest. So when an insurance company buys treasury bonds that pay a higher interest rate and they lock them in for 10 or 30 years, what does that mean happens next? Well, history proves that it increases your dividends. So now let's bring this all full circle because I hit exactly what the solution was, but you might have missed it because I went fast. So let's break this down into 4 solutions to kick inflation's ass and beat it and get wealthy because of inflation. Number 1, take your dollars that you use today and find a place where they can earn a higher interest rate. Stop being lazy and just accepting that your bank is paying you nothing. Find a bank that will pay you 3, 4, or 5%. Get the money over there. Then, number 2, if you've got money that's just gonna be sitting around for an extended period of time that you don't need for your bills, that's called savings. Let's take some of that and buy some short-term CDs, certificates of deposit. Many of you that are a little bit older love CDs. So buy 3 or 6 month CDs and get close to 5%, maybe even more. 3, remember I said, one of the best ways to build wealth is to just change where your money's going first. Let's find one of those specially designed whole life policies. And you know who can help you do that? We can. Right in the bio, there's a video up there that explains how the infinite banking concept works. Watch the video, book a call with my team, and we'll show you how to get your money working for you with uninterrupted compounding interest. Oh, and by the way, there's no IRS people in here, sir. Nope. If it's designed properly, it's tax-free. Yeah. All right, so now, what's the last thing to kick inflation's butt? This is the gusto. And this is the easiest part because I already told you how it works. The best way to beat inflation is to keep your money moving. That's it. You're like, really? All that? The whole buildup and that's the idea? Yeah. See, if your money's constantly moving and working for you, inflation can never impact you. Why? Because if your money's moving, and let me explain money movement. We take this money, we changed where it went first. We put it into that specially designed whole life. But then over on this side, we have a little bit of debt, just like everybody else. And we don't want that debt. We don't want to pay 20%, 30% to the credit card company. So we take the loan from our policy and we bring it over here. We pay off credit cards. We pay off car loans. We pay off any debts we have. But we don't stop there. Because now, remember when we took the loan from the policy, our money didn't leave the policy. It's still earning interest and dividends. The insurance company charges us a lower interest rate, simple interest, on that loan, and we use the loan to pay off higher interest rates. Are you getting it? We use low interest, cheap money from the insurance company to pay off high interest, expensive money from the other banks. We want to be the bank, which means we got to take back control of the money that we are giving away. And that's easy. If you pay off a credit card, you then take the monthly payment you were making the credit card and you take it and you put it back into the policy, which means you now have access and availability of that money, but it also means you paid the loan down to the insurance company, reducing the APR every single month you do that with money you were just giving away. That's right. That means by moving your money, you didn't have to work any harder. You didn't have to work any longer, and you didn't have to take on any risk because you were giving the money away and now you're just taking the money back. And that's credit cards, car loans, mortgages, whatever it is. And then when you don't have any debts, what are you gonna do? Go to PMC, go to privatemoneyclub.com and find out how you can lend money just like a bank. You're becoming a bank. Your money's in a constant state of movement. It's never sitting still. It's never just being in someone else's control. It's in your control, working for you, moving, and inflation has nothing against that. And keeping your money moving after you pay off all your debt is so easy. All you do is you go to privatemoneyclub.com. You want to be the bank, what you got to do is act like a bank, think like a bank, and do what a bank does. So what are we going to do? We're going to take our money and we're going to lend it out on real estate. And we're going to lend it out with collateralization because that's what a bank does, right? When you borrow from a bank for a house, what do? They make you sign a mortgage and a personal guarantee. Well, we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna make the borrowers sign a mortgage, making sure that if they don't pay us, we take their house. I know it sounds fun, doesn't it? But not only that, we're gonna get paid really good interest because we're gonna use cheap money to make expensive money. And that expensive money is somebody else paying it to us. That's what the banks do to us. Why don't we just become the bank and do the same thing? We never stop moving our money. PrivateMoneyClub.com allows you unlimited access to deals that you can do that with. You can lend money at whatever rate you want, and you can be in control of all the terms, you can be in control of the entire deal, and you can make the same money the bank does without having to deal with the bank. I hope you understand those 4 different things that I just mentioned, because they're all very simple. Seek a higher interest rate bank. Take and put your money in short-term CDs, or I didn't mention this, but hey, with that number 2, let's wrap in treasury bonds and treasury bills, because that's what supports those CDs. You just all know CDs, so I went to the lowest denominator for you, the one you already know, but you know what backs a CD? Treasury bills and treasury bonds. Remember I said who buys those? The United States government issues them to the Fed, and the Fed prints money. You can do the same thing. You can buy those IOUs from the government. Just go to treasurydirect.gov, find yourself some inexpensive, because they are pretty inexpensive right now, some inexpensive treasury bills and treasury bonds, and then skip the CD and go direct. Number 3, what did I mention? Change one thing, and that's where your money goes first. Get ultimate control and the ability to earn uninterrupted compounding interest with potentially tax-free gains internally. Yeah, that's that specially designed whole life. And number 4, which is the undisputed champ, keep your money moving. Inflation is your best friend when you do that. And if you look at the stats from any chart out there of who benefits from high inflation, well, it's the banks and the wealthy. Why? Well, because they do what I just told you. They know how to play the high interest rates. They know how to profit from the high interest rates, but they most importantly know how to move their money continuously, like I just taught you. And if you like this video, check this one out. It's called, Are You Ready for the Next Economic Cycle? It'll teach you all about those treasury bonds and treasury bills. Thanks for joining me. My name's Chris Naugle. This is What Now? What's next for your money?